and writing things down. They have healed the brokenness of my people slightly, saying peace, peace, when there is no peace. And I didn't just pick it out, I actually read it in context. So my plan is to kind of refer to that, because there is context with what I'm going to be talking about. But I just want to really quick introduce Sarah as well, for those of you who don't know Sarah.
Hi,
Sarah. There are some people that don't know her. Sarah and I are I'm still hot. It's still really tinny and hot.
Go ahead.
Sarah and I are co-directors of the Abolitionist Society of Reno. Yeah, and I really don't even need to introduce myself too much because I think everybody in here knows me, actually, except Paul. So I will. Paul doesn't know me.
Hi, Paul.
My name is Teresa Cobb, and I have been going to Valley View Christian Fellowship, and you know Pastor John McKendricks from there for probably about 13 years. This is my husband, and I have 3 children. I'm originally from Southern California, Escondido, North County, for those of you who live there. I say San Diego for people who don't know, but for those of you who do know, San Diego is not where I'm from.
We know.
So
Right.
San Diego.
I'm North County.
Hi.
Okay, I am a homeschool mom of 3. I've been homeschooling my kids since, I have 18-year-old daughters, so since they were in school. So my plan is, this is pretty much like a testimony, and kind of a talk, but it'll probably sound like I'm teaching sometimes just because it's in my blood. But I don't mean it to be that way. I think moms probably do that anyway. So I came from a non-Christian home. My parents, I didn't go to church. I went to church a couple of times, but my dad was an atheist, sort of an evolution, if you couldn't touch it, feel it, smell it kind of thing. My mom always believed in God.
Come on in.
I bet I know who that is. It's Pastor John McKendricks.
Oh my God.
Don't stare, But you don't know me, so I should probably back up. No. Here, let's have a seat somewhere.
There's plenty up here.
So yeah, a non-Christian home. My mom believed in God, but she definitely was not a Christian. I think that she believed in Jesus too, but she, wasn't walking with the Lord. She didn't know Him as Lord or Savior. Morals were somewhat taught in my home, but I learned about, the ways of life, about sex, and all those types of things from pornography and from kids in school, movies, that type of thing. I'm going to, be kind of stating a lot of things just as facts, and I don't want to give the impression that I'm building up to kind of say, I'm not responsible or anything like that. And sometimes I'm detached from things when I talk, and sometimes I get really kind of emotional, and I never know which way it's going to go. So I don't really feel that way right now, but we'll see. So the first time I ever heard the word abortion, maybe I heard the word, but the first time it really came to me to ask what it was, I was probably about 12 years old, I was thinking. And I was hanging out with my mom, and they had the 6 o'clock news on or something. And I remember the news broadcaster was talking about, I don't know, maybe a debate or something about abortion, and it was specific to, I don't think they said partial birth, I don't know, D and X maybe, but something to do with, how wrong it was. There was this debate, and I asked my mom, I said, what are they talking about? What's abortion? And she said, well, what they're talking about is when they kill a baby as it's being delivered or born. And I remember right now I got that feeling really quick, just shock, just horror. I just couldn't believe that. I was thinking criminals or something, and I remember her explaining, no, there are doctors who do that. So I kind of, I knew that was wrong. You don't kill babies as they're being born. I think that was kind of the first seed that was planted in me that people become more valuable as they get older. Planned Parenthood, shortly after I was in junior high, so I was probably like 13, not long later, came into my school, as they did to a lot of schools, especially in Southern California, big time, even in junior high. And they told us all the stuff that they still tell everybody, that your sex life is your own. You don't have to get permission, you don't have to talk to your parents. It's to do with what you want, and here's how to keep yourself from getting a disease, and here's how to keep yourself from getting pregnant, and an accident does happen, we will help you. You can come to us, and they were in our neighborhoods. So around that time, I knew a couple of girls next door. There were 3 sisters that lived next door to me. Again, I'm just trying to build a framework up for my mindset at the time. I always feel like I'm saying, that I'm not responsible or something, but I mean, this is just how things developed in my mind. I had these neighbor girls. They were all a little bit older than me. One of them was adopted, and she had a really, really rough life. She actually got pregnant herself at probably 16, and her mom kind of threw her out into the garage. And so my bedroom window was right next to their house, and I used to, see this is good crap, I used to hear her screaming at her. And she would fight, with her mom. Her boyfriend lived in the garage, and then she had the baby. The baby would be up crying in the garage and would echo and would fight her and her boyfriend. And then her younger sister, whose name was Teresa actually, she got pregnant, and she had an abortion. And I remember her telling me about it. And so I think by the time I was 14, I believe it was the summer between my 8th and 9th grade year, I had an 18-year-old boyfriend, and I found myself pregnant. And so I just, marched on down to the local Planned Parenthood because, that's what everybody was doing, right? I think that it really, now looking back on it, I understand that it fit in with what I wanted, and that was why I readily believed it, and there is a certain amount of deception that does go on, but it doesn't make it different because it's abortion. Deception is deception. A 10-year-old little boy who has no Christian parents, who's influenced by television or billboards or whatever, it's all deception. So I say this to say that women are not necessarily being, what's the word? It's not deceived. They're not being betrayed necessarily. I think it fits in, sometimes, most of the time, with what they want, to live their life how they want to live it and not have to deal with the consequences. So I went down to Planned Parenthood. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I was pretty young, but I remember, them pointing to this chart on the wall and saying, "Oh yeah, so this is where you're at." It was like a little circle thingy or whatever. It's just like a mass of cells, but you don't want to wait. They assumed I was going to have an abortion. I don't remember them ever talking about anything but that. You don't want to wait because that is when it gets more expensive. It gets more complicated. There are more complications. And then it can develop into a baby if you wait, so, yeah. So, massive cells, all that good stuff. So that's what they told me. And so they said to go to the local welfare office, this was California, and they'll pay for it. And then they gave me the address to the abortion clinic because this Planned Parenthood did not perform surgical or any abortions, I don't think, at the time. My boyfriend and I, we walked on down to the welfare office. I was really, really young. I remember looking at my daughters when they were 14 and just going, wow. And I didn't know what to say. I'm walking to the welfare office. I'm like, I need an abortion. And the lady behind the counter is like, oh, so you need Medicaid? And I said, yes. Medi-Cal, I guess it would have been. Medi-Cal. Yes, I don't know. And so the social worker called me back. Oh, and I was always really, really, really sick when I was pregnant. Every single pregnancy I've ever had, I am like sick. Rachel knows how this is. It is like miserable, to the point where when I was pregnant with my twin daughters, I was like hospitalized because I got dehydrated and I couldn't keep anything down, and it was just a bad deal. So, I'm throwing up all the way to the welfare office. And so when the social worker calls me back there, I pretty much sit down and I'm like grabbing her trash can and I'm vomiting in her trash can, and she feels really sorry for me. And, they're asking me to fill out all this paperwork, and I don't have an ID. I don't have even a student ID. I was only in junior high. I don't have a social security number. A social security card. I didn't know my social security number. All of that they wanted, just like, it's no problem. They pushed it through. I'm gonna get back to all this later. And so I went ahead and I had the abortion. I don't honestly remember a whole lot about that abortion. I went on to have another one later on. And I kind of get the facts mixed up. I'm not sure which one was which, because abortion does something to you where you suddenly don't look at life with clear eyes. You look at life that's kind of clouded, because just like somebody, I think, who's maybe been abused in a way, because if you looked at life in the reality of what life is like, you'd have to face some things. And so after that, it was all about who I was going to surround myself with, and I became super, super wild. I would be just like super outgoing and fun and crazy and wild one minute, and then the next minute just full of rage and flipping out and all that stuff. There's a lot of shame. It gets really hidden deep down, and this is why right now, this is the first time I think I thought of this.
I'm gonna
writing this
close
up.
it down, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you can see we're small. They have healed if somebody wants to keep it pulled up for me, because I think I'd like to go back to it.
Okay.
Or not that necessarily, maybe on their phone or whatever. Maybe pull up, it's Jeremiah 6:14. Because I don't want to lose that. I have it. I'll just read it. They have healed the brokenness of my people superficially, saying peace, peace, but there is no peace. I happen to know that it takes a very pointed truth. When we go and we do something to get an outcome, it's very specific. We created a utensil or a tool for it so that we can dig something out or whatever it might be. Well, that's how the Word of God is, right? It penetrates. It's sharp. And so if God's Word is removed, the brokenness or whatever it might be does not get reached. So, I actually, shortly after I had my second abortion, I moved to Reno. The guy, the father of my second child, he was kind of like a stalker, sort of. So I moved up here in part to get away from him. And then about a year after that, I met my late husband, my now late husband, and I got pregnant with twins, and we got married. I remember, being sick again, and every time I would get sick when I was pregnant, it would totally make me feel like I was 14 again, and I had a lot of trouble connecting with my daughters. I don't know how to explain it unless you've had an abortion and then gone and had children, but I had some real trouble connecting with them. And then they were born, and I loved them very much, and then I got pregnant again. And I didn't want to be pregnant again because I was so sick when I was pregnant, and I'd just gone through all that. And so I told my husband, I said, I'm going to have an abortion. And he didn't really say anything about it. To this day, because he's gone, I don't really know what he thought. I never really asked him. I just know that he was always kind of a scrapper, but he got in some fights during that time. And looking back on it now, I can see that it probably really affected him. So I had problems in my marriage. And my mom was always sending me these apologetic books, and so I ended up, giving my life to the Lord through a series of things. The apologetics books were really good for me, so that's why I like apologetics now, because I just had to relearn everything. 9/11, I know this sounds weird, but it had a lot to do with it. I was like, whoa, what's going on in the world? It just kind of shook me and woke me up. It caused me to seek things out and to understand why the world was the way it was. People Muslim, this, that, and the other. And so I kind of pursued that a little bit, which led me to the Word.
And that last abortion that you just were talking about, was it in Reno at that?
Yeah.
At the clinic that you went to.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't really planning on getting into that part too much. There's not much to tell other than if you're wondering, it was actually at this clinic here in Reno. I don't remember all that stuff. I talked to a woman today when we were out there who had an abortion 7 years ago, she said, out there. She was in there getting her paperwork. She is now a pro-life Christian. And she was getting her paperwork, and she doesn't remember it either. So I don't know if that progressed or if you just, because I see girls going in there and they're like this. So I don't know if they just don't see it. Maybe I didn't see it. I do know, though, that I got pulled over by the police because I was speeding. I had to pick my husband up because he had to drive me home afterwards. And I remember getting pulled over, and then I had car seats in the back, but obviously the girls weren't with me. And I was driving really fast, and the cop was like, where are you going? I'm like, a dentist appointment. I had to get my husband because he's got to bring me home, and I just remember being filled with and he looked in the back seat because he saw, and I was driving fast, and he saw car seats back there. So he was probably thinking something like, why are you driving so fast? Good thing there's not kids in the car. And I just remember being filled with a lot of guilt and shame. So anyway, fast forward a little bit. So God reaches down into my life, and he reveals himself to me, and it was amazing. God was everything to me. I wasn't one of those. I was a little bit of a taste and see, because it wasn't like an instantaneous pray this prayer or anything like that. I just step out in faith a little bit.
How did God reveal himself to you?
Well, really, a lot of things, but really what really happened for me is I started reading the Bible, and in the areas of my life where I had problems, in particular my marriage, which was really, really struggling, we did almost divorce at one point, I would start responding to those things with the peace of God and with his word, and he would reveal himself. He was faithful, and my life was different as I was taking steps. So I knew what walking with the Lord was really quickly from the very beginning. I was madly in love with him. I had hope. Everything looked different. The trees looked different. Creation was different. I was raised evolution. Everything was different. Everything was beautiful. Everything was filled with hope. I didn't care. I could be homeless out on the streets, but I've got Jesus. That's why I picked that song yesterday as the first song, because that song always has resonated with me. Of course, I didn't hear it back then, except for maybe on some movie or something where there was a Bible tent in the movie. I don't know. But I wasn't raised in church, so I still don't know a lot of hymns. I know Sarah wanted hymns, but I did the best. I did one. So I loved him with all my heart. But maybe it seems like it was within a week after I had really started making decisions for Christ, repeatedly making decisions. I remember I was in the bathroom, because that's where I do most of my praying when I'm doing my hair or whatever, like the deepest prayer. I remember thinking about my abortions, and really no one knew about them at the time. Obviously the fathers knew. There was a couple of other people in the first one, but I remember thinking about my abortions, and I remember thinking this. I thought, I would never do that again, because I no longer assert my will over yours, God. I don't do that anymore. I want to know your will, and I want to do what you want. And abortion wasn't that. Abortion was, you made me pregnant, and I said, I don't want to be pregnant, and then I ended the pregnancy. So I remember thinking of it like that, and I also thought of it as sexual sin. Because there was always shame. In the beginning, obviously, I was 14 years old. Last thing I wanted was for my parents to find out that I was pregnant. So I associated it with sexual sin and with me asserting my will over God's. And that was how I thought of abortion. And, I repented, but I still didn't ever tell anybody about it. I still didn't talk about it. I didn't really understand it. And it took me almost a year to even go to church. I don't know if this exactly has anything to do with abortion or not. It could be, I don't know, tattoos or something. But I just always felt like, I don't know how it's going to go. But I did it out of obedience, because I understood that God wanted me in fellowship, and my mom on the phone in California wasn't enough. And so I actually started out going to Calvary Chapel. But maybe, it was probably less than a year, so maybe about 9 months after that, and I listened to CSN radio. So most of the teachings that I got was on Calvary Satellite Network. My mom went to Calvary Chapel in Southern California, because there's lots of Calvary Chapels in Southern California, and I knew I could trust them. And they preached on the word, and I really liked it. I just couldn't get enough. And so I listened to CSN radio all the time. And so I'm in my car listening to it one time, and then this guy with this, powerful Southern accent's preaching, Dr. James Vernon McGee. And he's talking about something, and I knew he was going to talk about abortion. And then he says, I've listened to the sermon since then, but just to paraphrase, he basically says, abortion is murder. Abortion is no different than a mother taking her 3-year-old child by the hand and walking into an abortion clinic, or walking into a murder place for 3-year-olds, whatever it would have been called, and paying someone to destroy and kill her child. It's murder. And I remember feeling very, very angry. I was really angry at that guy for saying that. I felt like he was kind of heartless for saying that to me. I became so upset I had to pull over on the side of the road, and I turned him off. And I thought, okay, real quick, because God's so awesome, Real quick, it was like, well, okay, what am I going to do with this information? Now I'm at a crossroad here. Because I can say, no, it's not what he said, but something in my spirit, the Holy Spirit, in my spirit, however you theologically understand that, said to me, you have to listen to this because God is trying to tell you something. And so it was like, okay, is it right? Is this what it is? And as soon as I surrendered and submitted to it, I was just filled with peace. And I was actually able to start talking about abortion after that. Still didn't tell anybody that I had abortions. I'm not really sure why, maybe in part because my husband wasn't a believer and he didn't know, and I just wasn't at this point where I could really talk with him and connect with him on any, emotional or spiritual level. We were just kind of going through the motions. And I don't know, but I know that I was able to finally talk about abortion, and I was like dead set against it. So the thing that I took away from that was that from now on, I'm going to always think of abortion like this. It's like killing a 3-year-old. So if I hear a conversation, or if I talk about abortion and it doesn't sound like it would match if this child was 3 years old, then it's wrong, and it's not of God. And so I didn't always do it, as you'll see later, but that was what I tried to do. I know I've talked to Sean about that before. I have a conversation with you about that. I'm just trying to figure out what we would do if they were 3. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And so I would always say that. I got pregnant with my son, who is here. And it was totally different than all my other pregnancies because I knew the Lord, and I was excited, and I connected with my child, and I was really pumped about it, even though I still was throwing up all the time. I was so excited that I made an appointment at the OBGYN really early on. They typically see you at about 8 weeks, I think it is, for like the first time. And I was like, I need an appointment. And so I went in, and they did the sonogram, and I was actually only 5 weeks pregnant. I didn't put, because they'll ask you, have you ever had abortions when you go to the gynecologist and stuff like that? And I didn't put that on my paperwork. I was like, I wonder if he can tell, I was all this weird stuff. But as they did the sonogram, he's like, oh yeah, there's a little beating heart. And even still then, I was like, whoa, 5 weeks. Oh, wow, beating heart, So God's showing me, Now, this is not to say that obviously life doesn't begin with a beating heart. This is just to say that that those things, that we can talk about those things, and that's okay, but they have to be in context. But just to say that things weren't as I thought they were. So it was just more truth revealed to me, more understanding, more of the humanity of my child, at least. So about 2 months after my son was born, my husband died in an off-road accident. He hit his head, he was in a coma, and then we had to remove him from life support. And I never did tell him. So that's going to make me cry. I never did tell him. And I don't know where he's at, but maybe someday. So I had a roommate, Rachel, and I was going to ask you if I could say this, and I forgot, so can I? I was just going to talk about you for a second. Okay, so Rachel and I, she worked at Trader Joe's, became super good friends. She had her own issues in life at that moment, and I'm like, come in, move in with me. And so it was like two sisters, and she just loves my kids like they're her own, and I mean, she helped me raise Noah for the first year of his life. And Rachel was raised in a Christian home, believed in God and believed in Jesus, and was very, very pro-life. She got pregnant outside of wedlock at a young age as well, and never would have considered abortion. And she has a wonderful daughter that has the same name as my daughter, 2 Harmonies, born a day apart. But I remember her and I getting into these abortion discussions because some of the influences of her life as well, but she was going to vote for Carrie, you know, and I was like, you can't vote for Carrie. She's like, I don't want to be, right, I don't want to be a one issue voter, so there influences her life. You know, so I was like, you know, pro-life, you know, I was like, no. And then I met Tracy, and we were married about 2 years after my husband died, and Rachel had to move out at that point. But I need water, hold on. Okay, and then I'm a reader. I like to read. I'll read anything. I read fiction. I'll read whatever. So I came across this book. I actually think that Tracy's. Let me just tell you about Tracy just really fast. Okay. Because this guy, he raised his ex-wife, who was his girlfriend at the time, cheated on him and got pregnant by a married man, and she didn't want the baby. And she came to him and he was like, I'll help you. And so he, in the womb, you know, raised this boy, named him Craig, because he was a single dad when I met him. He had a daughter later as well. He's a little younger than my daughters. Raised him as his own. So this is the kind of guy he is. You know, he got it, you know. And he wasn't even a Christian at the time, but I know it was a struggle. But so I think his son had this book, Deadline was this book, and it's a big, thick fiction book written by Randy Alcorn. And I didn't really know who Randy Alcorn was at the time, so I'm reading this book, and he talks about abortion like a lot in a lot of his books. And so he was describing some things, and I was like, whoa, you know, just this was actually just the spread of abortion in culture and its ties to different things, the medical field and just various things in this fiction book. And I was really blown away. And so I started reading other Randy Alcorn books, and he has this pro-life apologetics book about that thick. Like every argument you could ever think of is in there. So I read through all that, and he had this book. Well, I was just stunned at the stuff I was reading. I started Googling and just reading everything I could get my hands on at that point. And yeah, so I read this book, Is Rescuing Rights, because he was part of the rescue movements in the 80s. And I don't know if you know his story or not, but he was arrested and sued by a large abortion provider, and the abortion provider won $1 million. He didn't want any money to go to them, and so he stepped down from his position as pastor to make minimum wage, and all of the proceeds from all of his books now go to charities, Christian charities and stuff like that. He's a pretty cool guy. So he wrote this book that's now out of print, but I wanted a copy really bad, Is Rescuing Right. He really gave me this framework, for the unborn. And as I'm doing all of this, I'm really at that point understanding that I have 3 children. I like to think that they're in heaven. I don't have an argument for that theologically. I don't know, but I know that I trust God. So he is just and he is good. And so whatever that is, however that plays out, I'm sure that I will not be disappointed when I find out. So I remember wailing. I mean, I faced it. I forced myself to face it. Every detail that you could possibly imagine. And I remember thinking something. Why weren't, and I wasn't saying that it was the pro-lifers or the church's fault. Why wasn't there anybody there when I went to 3 different abortion clinics? Why, how long have I been a Christian now, have I not heard it talked about in church? I've only had one conversation with another Christian that I wasn't like a me and Rachel kind of conversation. And they were all messed up about it. And like a leadership type person, wasn't a pastor or anything. And why is it not talked about? If this is happening, and it's happening at the rate that it's happening, and I just was stunned. I couldn't understand, okay, all right, so let's just do it. I mean, you have struggles at your church, you have struggles with things, and sometimes you want to go or you want to give up, and then God's like, no, stop being critical of other people, you just be what I tell you to be. Stop being critical. He tells me that all the time. That must mean I'm really critical. So just be who I want you to be. Just be who I tell you to be, Teresa. And stop it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be who you told me to be. So I had to really tell people that I had abortions at that point. So I told 2 friends. Rachel was one of them. And I told my husband. I told my husband first, obviously. Super, gracious, of course. And I just remember him going, why didn't you tell me? Because we had gone through premarital counseling. Of course, that question wasn't on, the premarital counseling. I don't know that it necessarily has to be, but it would not be a bad thing to be on there. All that kind of stuff. And he had revealed some things to me that were deeply personal. And my only answer for him was, it didn't occur to me. It was buried so deep, and I was like, I'm a believer. I mean, I didn't think this, but I was so deeply involved with my relationship with God, and he was taking me to this place where I needed to talk about it, but I couldn't go there on my own. Does that make sense? Like, I literally couldn't go there on my own. It never occurred to me that was maybe when it said, is there anything that you need to confess or to reveal to this person before you marry? Do it before you're married, do it now. So I did ask that question, and I didn't. So I remember Rachel just kind of going, and I'm like, yeah, it wasn't one. And I would tell her more of the story, and she was kind of like, wow, and we knew each other really well. I now was going to tell my pastor at the time, which was not Pastor John McKendricks. And he actually came over to the house. He and my husband were doing stuff together a lot. He was a nice guy. And I was telling him about my experiences at the abortion mill here in Reno. And I was telling him about some of the stuff that I'd gone through and that I'd had abortions and people. And I think I was talking specifically about the Abortionist in Reno, because I hadn't gone to the clinic, but I was looking it up, because part of me facing all of that was, where was this place? Who is this doctor? And what was really going on there? And I remember, whoa, that guy's crazy. And so I was talking, and I remember him looking at me and saying, Teresa, he just need Jesus. And I thought, that's true. They need Jesus. But it was such a weak response. He did not understand what I was saying, nor did he ask me any more about it. And I remember just being like, no, you don't understand what I'm saying. They need Jesus. Of course they need Jesus. So what are we going to do about it? And I remember just going, wow. But I didn't stop. I kept, talking to him about it. And he's like, Teresa, why don't you call the local crisis pregnancy center? And I'm like, the what? And he's like, the local CPC. I'm like, the what? And, he's telling me what it is. I'm like, I'd never heard of anything like that. So part of the reason that I know that, it takes a certain kind of person to wind up at the CPC. Most girls don't even know that they exist. Maybe they do more now. Maybe there are more now. That's possible. But I'd never heard of them. And I'd been a Christian for a couple of years at that time. And I'm like, okay, maybe because I wanted to get involved. I wanted to do something. So I called up the CPC, and whenever you call the CPC and you ask them if you can help them out, they always ask you, have you had an abortion? And if you have, then they will tell you that you need to go through PACE, which is post-abortion counseling. And I was like, okay, I'm totally going to do that, because I wanted, just anything. I just wanted to soak it up. I was like, I'm just going to face it, and I'm going to do it. And I remember Sean ministering to me and really guiding me through the prayer process of that, and telling me she was going to pray for me, and how hard she volunteered at the CPC. And so she'd seen girls go through this. And what I have to say about that, because I know there's a lot of negative aspects to the PACE counseling that goes on, and I totally get it. I think it depends on, it can depend on the curriculum, And then also the counselor that you have. If your counselor is, a spirit-filled believer, if they know Jesus and they're walking with Jesus, they want you to come to a place of healing. And I had a really amazing counselor, and the Bible study, it was really just a Bible study that we did. It was still the most powerful Bible study that I've ever been through. But I don't think that that's the case. And even still looking back on it, I could see where that could happen in there, because when you have an abortion, there is a huge element of bitterness. Even if you weren't raped or something along those lines, to the people that didn't protect you. So in my case, it might have been my father, okay? You have bitterness, maybe towards the boyfriend, or whatever, who talked you into it or whatever. There's bitterness there. So what they do, and if you don't have a good counselor, I think this gets really messed up, is they teach you to repent of your bitterness. And they tell you that that is sin. So in order to do that, and this depends on where the girl is at, but I am prideful. I can't have people tell me things. I have to read it, and it's got to be me and God. It's really hard for me. Or I'll get mad, and then later I'm like, okay, all right. So I owned it all. I owned my sin. I'm like, man, that was all me. And it was all me. But there were these bitter roots in there that if I acknowledged them, does that make sense? I felt like that would make me vulnerable. That would make me a victim, and I wasn't going to be a victim, even as a born again believer. And because this counselor was wise and keen, she had very fine, sharpened tools. She knew right where to go in the Word and right what to say. She was like, no, and this is where we have problems, is because they'll use the same tactic. Maybe they don't have the Spirit, and they'll say the same things to every person. Right. And for me, it was, Teresa, there are other people in there that were part of that. Are you going to let them own some of it? Don't be so afraid to be a victim. And I was ticked at her. I get mad, and I was really mad. She said some stuff to me, and then, I was like punching the dashboard of my car. Why do I have to go back in there? Why? And God was like, I'm probably going to talk for a really long time. And God was like, working out your salvation with fear and trembling. I'm like, because I'm going, why do I got to go back there? I'm supposed to be thinking on what is pure and what is, and I'm living in the past. I just didn't, I couldn't, no. You're working your salvation out into your life, and you're just fearful and you're trembling, right? Okay. So what she taught me was that I had bitter roots, and that I needed to repent and I needed to forgive because I had been forgiven. So if the counselor doesn't do it that way, and some girls may not, they might blame all the people and not take responsibility for themselves. And so everybody cannot be treated the same way, and so I think that, the counselor in the CPC is really, and then some CPCs have restrictions on things, and some of them actually probably can't do that. Maybe there's a set of rules that they have to go by. I don't know. I'll just know my experience. So I went to these, and I had pretty much already dealt with my abortions, I found, when I was in there. I just had this bitter root. So when it came to the abortion part of it, I processed a lot of that with God. But he did teach me tools on forgiveness and how to deal with, when things came up, basically pulling things out by the root, calling them by their right name. She was pretty good. So I called back the CPC, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I went to my class, and I'm ready to help you guys out. And she was like, I don't think you're cut out for counseling abortion-minded women. I don't know why she would say that. She's like, you're just really passionate. And I really liked her. She's not the pregnancy director right now, but her and her husband were before, and they were very, very nice people. She's very gentle with me. And at first I was like, what? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, probably. She's like, well, let me tell you about a couple of different things. Well, I remember I asked her too. I said, so do you guys go down to the abortion clinic? Like in my mind, I just thought, this is how seriously naive I was. I thought, well, they're a crisis pregnancy center, so they obviously go to the abortion clinic, and then they tell them to come to the crisis pregnancy center. She was like, no, we don't do that. And I was like, what? I thought that was really weird. Well, why wouldn't you do that? I didn't understand that at all. She's like, no, we don't do that. But there is a group that goes down there but they're Catholic. And well, predominantly Catholic. And I was like, oh. She's like, yeah, this one lady's in charge of it. We know her. And so, there's that. Or, there's the Right to Life. I can give you this guy's number, and you can call him up. And so I'm like, okay. So CPC, Right to Life. All right. So CPC says no. I'm gonna go ahead and 40 days. That's the other one, and the Right to Life. So I didn't want to do the Catholic thing, so I called up the Right to Life, and he called me back immediately. And so I'm talking to him on the phone, and he's asking me my story, and so I give him my testimony. And he was really, really interested in how the state of California paid for my abortion when I was 14, without Social Security number and without. He was super, super interested in that. And then, so I was telling him just what I was interested in, and I told him that I really wanted to go down to the abortion clinic. And he was like, silence. And pretty much totally lost. Because before that, he was like, yeah, we've got this post-abortive group of women that go and talk. You could be a part of that. And we're trying to get this thing together where we go to high schools. And this might happen, you could be a part of that. And then I'm like, I want to go to the abortion clinic. And then he's like, never mind. So pretty much that door shut. That's exactly what happened. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got to go hang out with the Catholics. I actually didn't do that. I didn't. I didn't actually know any Catholic people at the time. So I just went to the abortion clinic with Rachel. And we walked around the whole building, and we were like, whoa.
That lady was there.
And, what lady?
Remember the lady? Like, I don't know, she was all like,
oh, the lesbian lady doing yard work. There was a lesbian lady
She
there.
started yelling at us.
Yeah.
Like, these teenagers need birth.
I don't think that was the first time, though.
I know, because we parked at the TMCC.
So we started going once in a while. I remember that. We were terrified. We parked down at the school, and we walked up there. We didn't want anybody seeing our cars. Not other people like the abortion seeing our cars. And so we're there. And one of the times that I went there, I ran into the woman. Her name is Carol Marie Siedenberg, who runs the 40 Days, or ran the 40 Days for Life. She was the director of 40 Days for Life, Reno, Tahoe here. And I really liked her. She was really cool. She is really cool. We're still really good friends. She moved to my hometown in Escondido, so whenever I go down there, I go and I visit her. So I ran into her, and she was like, yeah, get involved. I'm trying to get the Protestant churches to get involved. Trying to get the Protestant churches to get involved. And the whole time I'm going, well, you're Catholic. That's probably why they're not getting involved. So I'm like, all right, I didn't want to go out there by myself. And there were a few Protestant people that were involved as well. One of them we just saw yesterday, Miriam. Rachel ran into her and said, hey, we're going to be out there. And so she came down from Tahoe. She's a neat lady. And so there were some other people that were involved. Actually, Miriam wasn't part of 40 Days for Life. She would just go when she could. So I was doing that. And I really ran with it. So where am I? Okay, so I'll get back to some of that. So then I'm still with my pastor at my church. So I'm just talking to my pastor all the time. I'm talking to everybody at church. Abortion. And blah, blah, blah. I'm talking. And I just really hounded him, and finally he's like, fine, you can teach a Sunday school class. And I was like, yes. So John Piper has this curriculum, and it's titled Abortion is About God Reframing a Moral Issue. And so it's from the foundation up, and then our responsibility as believers. And I think I taught 8 weeks. It might have been 10. It was for a long time. Yeah, he really did. He just let me go for it. He never looked at the curriculum. He didn't, so there's hope. That's really cool. And he let me teach this class, and it was super intense. It was actually the most well-attended Sunday school class we've ever had at Valley View. It was packed out. It dwindled over some time, but there was a lot of people there. And one person in particular, who was not a believer, that some friends were bringing to church, she would actually get angry, and she would stand up, and I knew she had an abortion. It was intense. She now is super tied into our church. She totally loves Jesus. She's really amazing, really funny lady. Bless you, Pastor John. And so, that was just a really powerful time. And then all this time I'm meeting with Carol Marie and I'm doing the 40 Days for Life thing and all that. And, but I had some problems along the way. Well, one of them was just simply what I had said, it was predominantly Catholic, and there was just some things I couldn't reconcile with my faith. I wasn't going, oh, I don't want to do this, because I just didn't understand how it all fit together. I knew God had shown me something, and it wasn't just personal. He had shown me something, a big picture, and it wasn't just personal. But I didn't understand how what I was doing, at least a large part of what I was doing, fit in with the Great Commission. I didn't get it. So I didn't have a problem sharing my faith, and so I did that. But what I was learning about pro-life, first let me just say that the Catholics, some of them would stop me from sharing the gospel. One point, I remember calling Sean up in tears. I had a young Jewish guy riding his bike, and he was like, what is this place? And he didn't like abortion. And so we got to talking, and there was some 40 Days for Life guys out there. Not the guys that you saw out there. They're pretty cool. They never had a problem with any of that. But he was Jewish, and so we started talking about the sacrifice, and then, he was an artist, and we were talking about art, God, creation, masterpieces, and how it's in our mind. It's in God's mind and God's heart. He was before he created something, like art has to be here. We were just connected. It was this awesome conversation, and I'm sharing with him Jesus being the sacrifice. And then next thing I know, this arm. This is just one story. This is the worst one. Jumps in front of me, and he's like, "You can't call him a sinner. You don't know he's a sinner." And it just got way. Then the Holy Spirit, poof, it was done. The conversation was done. I didn't even argue with the guy because I didn't want to make it worse. I tried to kind of explain why he just didn't want me to talk anymore. He handed me a rosary, said, you need to pray, and it was just like, and I'm crying, I'm on the phone with Sean, because I wanted to be there that day, but I didn't want to be there with them, and with him, really, or any of the other ones. Like, I had gone to some walks for life, they were crazy weird, big cardboard cutouts of Mary. And so, you've got at the clinic, the abortionist blasting his music, and you've got chanting going on behind you, and then people cussing down. It was just out of control, and I'm like, whoa. So that was really, really awful. Something else that always had bothered me about what I was experiencing with the pro-life movement was this weird focusing on suffering. I understand that we're supposed to, help ease people's suffering. I understand that. But there was like this war on what was worse for women. And I knew this. I saw this very clear, and it really just was weird. So there'd be like, the pro-abortion side would be like, yeah, so we have to make abortion legal because abortion, if they don't have an abortion, it hurts them emotionally. And then you've got the pro-life side going, no, we have to make abortion illegal because if a woman gets an abortion, it hurts her emotionally. And then the pro-abortion side's going, no, we have to make abortion legal. We have to keep it legal because then they're going to get like illegal abortions and it's going to hurt them physically. And then the other side's going, no, we have to keep abortion, or we have to make abortion illegal. I forgot where I was going with that one. But because women are having botched abortions and perforated uteruses and becoming sterile and stuff like that. And I'm just going, what on earth is going on? And they're like, okay, even like with the child, they're kind of doing this. They're focusing on, abortion has to be legal because of poverty, and they're going, no, the child's suffering. It has to be illegal. And so there's this like weird thing there. And I'm like, this is totally fruitless. I don't understand. This can't be what we're supposed to be focusing on here, because you can go anywhere with that, anywhere with it. And be convinced of one thing or the other, just depending on where your sensitivities lie. What is more painful for you to watch, basically? So that really bothered me a lot. The language that was used at the CPC, I had been to rallies, and by this time they had switched. I don't really know how the CPC directors handled it before, but the person at that point that was out at these rallies, even amongst his peers, he would call it terminating a pregnancy. And I would go, why do you call it that? Why do you call it that? Why do you say terminating a pregnancy? It drove me nuts. I remember getting really upset one time. I think Rachel was there for that. So the language really, really bugged me a lot. Because it was intense for me. I'm like, this is intense. People are being killed, and you're just gonna like downplay it like that? I don't get that at all. I mean, I realize you're trying to attract women, try to, what they say, catch more flies, hunting, right? And I really liked an AHA meme recently, it was like rotten fruit. That's really what that's about. We had, somebody said that to Danny and I, that, Students for Life girl said, no. Well, we're not trying to catch flies, it was kind of, I just hate the whole thing, it's so silly. But so it was, you can't talk about it like that. I mean, don't you realize that you're working against anything good when you're not talking about it in the right way? And, like the happy faces, and it's like, people are being killed. Would we do that if it was 3-year-olds? That was the question. Would we do that, or my first one, yeah. But would we do that if they were 3-year-olds? Would we put happy faces? Would we say terminating, I don't know, what might we call it? We could
Toddler.
Terminating a toddler. Toddler termination.
Terminating
Terminating parenthood. Perfect. I like that.
Right.
Terminating parenthood. Would we say that? I don't think we would. And so I'm like, there's something really weird about this. And we're talking about death, and I'm like, and it always bothered me. And then again, the focus on the gestation. Again, I understand there's a place for it. Totally, absolutely a place for it. Because it's real, and it's creation, and it's mystery, and it's shocking, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think that's the biggest thing, and it's God. But the focus on things becoming worse as they got older really boiled back down to the whole suffering thing that I was talking about. What bothers us more to watch? We're supposed to renew our minds and look at things the way God looks at them. And I don't think that that's easy to do when you're talking about a preborn human being. It takes a lot of effort, and I think God wants us to do that. I know He does. I know it. And again, so I had that question in my head. So, it just never really occurred to me that I could actually step outside of the pro-life framework. I was sharing that, I think maybe with Russ or somebody earlier today. It never really occurred to me that, because you have this framework set in front of you, and I didn't really challenge it. I went kind of along with it. I would talk with Rachel or my husband or people I was comfortable with. Maybe it was partly fear. Mostly I think it was just, it was just sort of, I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't my time. Sanctification. So, Rachel and I even did a Students for Life interview, and I remember one time, and it bugs me, I won't watch the video now, they were talking about why it's important. They were advertising for 40 Days for Life is what they were doing, and so Students for Life came to Reno and interviewed Rachel and I, and we said, well, it's really important that you go to the abortion clinic or whatever, and because, we see abortion numbers going down, and we did. We saw abortion numbers going down, but we also both knew, and I did bring this up to people, I would just say, but Planned Parenthood is are you 486 now? Maybe that's why it's going down. And well, they just made it legal to put Plan B on the Walmart shelves. Maybe that has something to do with it. And they were just like, oh, but we could never know, and it's victory. And I remember one of the abortion or Planned Parenthoods in Reno closed, and they kind of said that with it. And it seemed like it was just really slow. They just didn't really need that location. I don't know. So those things, I didn't really talk about them a whole lot, but they were always there. So Rachel and I are reading buddies. And so I started reading Sophie Scholl, which is why we called this The White Rose, because when Sarah and I met, we were like, oh, kindred spirits. I started reading Sophie Scholl. I started reading, the Eric Metaxas, William Wilberforce biography, the Dietrich Bonhoeffer biography by Eric Metaxas, and as well as Dietrich Bonhoeffer's writings themselves, especially Cost for Discipleship, obviously. And and the parallels were astounding. And they weren't made entirely purposeful. It's just the way that it is. I liked how Russ put it. It's the same spirit. It's the same spirit. And so, I was blown away. Rachel and I couldn't get enough talking about it. So this is where we're at. And then all of a sudden, I see AHA on Facebook. And I'm like, these guys are super cool, okay? Because they use biblical language. They don't use the culture's language. Their framework is completely based on the Bible. They don't neglect social or biological things, totally didn't, but they kept them in context. They were evangelical. They were all about sharing the gospel and taking it back to God. They totally understood that that was how it ties into the Great Commission, a lot of ways, but that really, you cannot tell somebody that they can't kill what is in their womb if they don't understand what it is. We don't go around, and it's funny because we get accused of, you can't clean up the world, you can't point out sin, they don't know the Lord, and so you're basically telling people they need to get their act together, they need to stop doing wrong, right? But it's really quite the opposite of all of that. Really it's about keeping God in it and not being afraid to talk about it. So I really noticed something that I had never really thought about, is that they actually focused on the exceptions. I with the pro-life movement, pretty much, we would go like this. You're kind of trained to go, yeah, but only 1% of those, and then you change the subject. They actually focused on the exceptions without fear of losing their audience. And that was something really different, something I hadn't really thought about, and I was like, wow, they weren't afraid of that. And then this was like the clincher, in the beginning for me. And I'm not going to say this right. I actually wanted some of you guys to say it. So what's the question you guys always ask? It was really similar to my question. Something like, what does it look like to be a Christian? And what's the exact question, the wording on that?
What does Christianity look like in a culture
that murders its children? That was the question that was being asked. And it was super similar to my question of, what if they were 3 years old? What's that?
You want to repeat it for the video?
Yeah, what was it? I always forget it because that's not my question. My question in my head is,
3-year-old.
what if they were 3? Because to me it's kind of the same thing, because that's how God looks at them. Like they're the same as a 3-year-old, right? So what does Christianity look like in a culture that murders its children? Okay, so that was the question that they were asking, and I was like, wow, that's the question that I want to find the answer to too. So I'm gonna, check this out. So we progress into, voting season, and they start talking about, this thing called mediatism versus incrementalism. And I'm not really a super political person. I'm not totally apolitical. I just not, boring, But I like to cook and sing. But I didn't really understand that very much. I tried. And I wanted to understand it. I'm as stiff-necked as the next person, but I think that my heart was mostly at that point wanting to understand. So in spite of the fact that, I was seeing all of the things that I told you about, surgical abortion going down, what chemical abortions growing up, the suffering and all of that. And one thing I did notice was the laws about making abortion clinics safer and cleaner. That one was weird to me. I didn't really, I'm like, pro-lifers want to do this? I don't really understand that. So the pro-choicers, they're the ones, women, health, I don't know. I didn't really get that. But I was trying to understand that, and I'm not going to get into that a whole lot. I'll probably kind of explain at the end a little bit about it. I'm hoping that Russ will really talk a little bit more about that. All I can really do is share my experience, and what I found out is that people say things in different ways, and so you can hear the same thing from 10 different people, but it just takes that one, and then you go, I get it. The Holy Spirit's timing too, I don't know. But so I'm online and I'm asking these questions. And, okay, I'm just going to tell you exactly what happened. So this guy, this abolitionist guy, posts this pro-life thing that was like, about saving babies. It was basically like let's vote for the lesser of two evils, but of course it wasn't phrased that way. And I had seen all this debate and discussion on there, and I liked it. And then he tapped. He was on it. Everyone who just liked that, blah, 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 blah. And he starts saying this stuff. I'm going, wait a minute, And so I'm trying to talk to him. And I'm going, no, but I don't understand this and I don't understand that. And he lost his patience with me, I think. I think he thought they were rhetorical questions. Now that I've been doing this for a while, I could see where you could lose your patience because you hear the same thing over and over. But it's still wrong and it's not helpful. And I'm not even going to say that some of the things he said were wrong. They're just definitely not the way I would do it, you know. So I got really, really mad, and I'm like, I don't like these AHA people or whatever they are. And so I like deleted all the Facebook stuff. And I'm like, I don't even want to be associated with them. Those people are mean. They made me feel like I wasn't doing enough, and I really, really wanted to do something. I was just trying to figure out how it was. That's an important lesson to learn too, I think. Something that I even forget. So I was like, this stinks. But something else, man, there's so much into this too. And I hope you pick up on what I don't say. I pray that you do. But I went off on my own angry. And that was okay. Because I know God. And I had come to a crossroad. I could not go back to pro-life. I had seen something different. But I wasn't sure that that these people knew what they were talking about, because there was definitely at least one area that I didn't understand. And so I started, I sat on it for a while, and I didn't know what to do. And I started reading everything. I thought, I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to find something, and then I can just dismiss it. I wasn't necessarily hoping for it, but I was hoping for God to reveal it. So I was like, I just want it, then I'll just dismiss it, and it'll be done. And that'll be in the past. Or God, you need to show me this thing that I don't understand, this immediatism thing. And it wasn't that I wanted to become political. I guess I just felt like there was something to it that was either completely wrong or completely right. And so I went into it going, just, Lord, show me. Show me. And I read, and I read, and I read, and I read, and I watched the arguments, those didn't help. And I watched videos, and then, I skipped something, but basically, when I was talking to God about it, what he told me is, Tracy, you totally do have blind spots. And that I need grace I've needed grace for lesser things than what this person did to me on Facebook, What do you call it? He attacked me. Framed me. I don't know. What's the word? I'm just saying, he set me up. Yeah. I was thinking of something else, but that's exactly what he did. He totally set me up. That's not cool, that's not Christian. But anyway, so I was like, I totally have needed grace for like way less than that, and he is a Christian person, presumably. I didn't know this person at the time. I know you guys are all thinking, who was it? Who was it?
Does it rhyme with?
Did I tell you who it was? I did, didn't I? Yeah, I told him.
Don't say it.
Yeah, no.
We all love him.
Yeah. I've since met him, and he's hilarious, and I really, really like him.
He was cage stage.
So God's just like, and somebody told me this, you've given grace to these Catholics. This person, you need to have some grace. I've given grace to friends, people in my body who are backslidden or who are new believers, and they're just not in these places that I would like them to be. You can have grace here too. It's possible. So I was like, all right. So that's when I started watching everything, looking to dismiss or looking for God to show me something that I could hold on to, that just revealed to me, helped me to understand. And I came across a video by Grant Keeter. I think it was from the first conference. It's called Immediatism Properly Understood and Applied. And if you don't understand it, I just really recommend that you watch it.
10 times.
So I watched it, and as I rewatched it, so that I could know more about what it was that he had said. And it's funny because I watch it now, and it's not this big Holy Spirit moment. It's just like, yeah, okay, it's Grant Keeter talking about immediatism. But I couldn't really relive that. But he did say, in the very beginning, he says, if I persuade some of you, he says it not like, if I persuade some of you, he's like, okay, well, here I am, and if I persuade just some of you, I'll totally be thrilled. He said it kind of like that. And God totally used it. He said a lot of things. He talked about compromise. He talked about wells of refuse, things that we keep going back to, about negotiating with sin, he said people are suppressing the truth in unrighteousness. He talked about the sovereignty of God. And then mostly what really hit me is honoring God with everything that we do. I mean, every area, every thought, every word we choose, every vote we cast, every thing that we assign ourselves to, everything that we commit to, if in any way, shape, or form we wouldn't do it if they were 3, is not okay. That's what I learned when I watched that. Because when we do that, we are taking matters into our own hands. And when you take matters into your own hands, you remove the power of God. And God can't work, God doesn't work through that. He doesn't bless that. You're not honoring him. And it was like, you watch something and you're like, yeah, but what about? And then they say it, and then you go, okay, but what about? And then they say it. That was how this watching this video was for me. I was just like, at the end of it, I totally understood it. And it wasn't one of those, oh yeah, I get that. Oh, where we go? Like, it was now, it was just part of me. Oh, I can walk that out too. I can walk that out now. So that's pretty much the end of it. So, I'm not saying necessarily that everybody here, needs to slap on an AHA symbol and do things that, I realize everybody has their own capacity. I think it'd be cool, but I'm actually not. I got to talk to a students, in a way, I got to talk to a Students for Life person with Danny, and then with Jake, I got to talk to another woman out at the abortion mill today who was very angry at us. She was a sidewalk counselor. She actually worked in the brothels. She knows some people in Awaken. She did sidewalk counseling, I think in Ventura, she said, so somewhere in California, worked with the CPC there, and was telling me how we're doing it so wrong. I was telling Jake for a while before I walked over there. But by the end of the conversation with both of these people, they pretty much ended up with the same thing. They both were like, maybe if I would have just come over here, and I can say this because both of these guys are present, maybe I just needed to learn. Maybe if I just would have come over here not so much this way and would have just been like, well, I just kind of want to learn. Maybe I want to learn a little bit. Both of them said that they would maybe come tonight. I didn't really expect them to come, but they're not the same. There were some serious seeds planted there, and so all I really want is to just speak what God has shown me and have the faith and the confidence to know that He is sovereign and that He is going to not waste that. And just one more thing, I think going out to the abortion clinic, I don't remember who said this recently. Maybe 2 more things. I want to say one more thing after that. Going out to the abortion clinic is just something that you do when you really, really grasp the sovereignty of God. Because when you're out there, it's not in your hands. And when you try to make it in your hands, you end up like all those things that I was talking about. So, and that's why most of them don't go to the abortion clinic. Very few pro-lifers go to the abortion clinic. Because you really have to trust God, and that none of it's wasted, that He uses all of it, and it's okay that people are angry at you. It's all right that people are mad. I don't understand why we think that that's, I'm not saying that we need to purposefully get people angry, and I'm not saying that abolitionists don't sometimes do that, especially on Facebook. In person, not so much, honestly.
Yeah.
But if you haven't come out with us, you don't know. So I'm just saying.
I have no friends anymore.
But it's okay for people to get angry. And it's okay even if they don't talk to you, because, those seeds have been planted, and God He's going to take them to that crossroad, and what they do with that isn't in our hands. God loves them, and He loves, His preborn people more than we could even do it. I struggle with ageism. We call it all the time. I have to just renew my mind. Who are they? And then the other thing I wanted to say was Don Blythe actually told me a story on the phone the other day. He's from Project Truth. And he's not an abolitionist, but he kind of is. But he's awesome.
On the spot.
Yeah. So he did this message on encouragement last night, and it was incredible. He's just got the joy of the Lord, and so he told me on the phone about. You can correct me, but I'm going to try to just make this simple. There was a women's conference with I don't know how many women, but lots of women, and then the speaker came out. Do you know where I'm going with this? And then the speaker came out, and before she talked on, probably after she prayed, before she talked on and she was supposed to talk on, she said, women, I need to talk to you about, I don't know her wording, I'm just going to say it the way, maybe the way I might say it, about the abortions that you've had. You know, I want to talk to you about this because you can't get closer to God at a certain point. And it's not just abortion, it's other things as well. I'm not saying that, but there is something unique about a mother, a parent murdering their child. I mean, could I do anything worse than murder my son? What would make you look at me with judgment? I mean, can you think of me doing anything else worse? So that's how we feel about ourselves. You know, in truth, how we process it is different depending on the woman. But so this woman, I don't know what exactly she said, but she drew them to this place, and he listened to a recording of it. Is that correct? A woman had showed you the recording, and these women were wailing, just on the floor, wailing. And I think that you know, we just need to stop being so afraid and start loving our preborn neighbor the way that we love ourselves or a 3-year-old. That's it.